running fans, jumping fans, throwing fans, all around athletics fans, welcome to Talking in Ovals podcast. I'm Alex Cuesta. My partner Dave Hyatt is over there. What's going on, brother?
Not much, man. What a day today, man. I got to watch the marathon at like 9 o'clock this morning. Both races were absolutely incredible. But I think my favorite thing of the whole day in terms of track was this little war that we're starting to see between Curly and Jacobs. Pretty awesome, man. And then Lyles chimes in. He's like, I got 20K on Curly. And then Michael Johnson's chiming in. Like, that's exactly what we need for the sport. Brings back memories of Bailey versus Johnson for that 150. I say, let's just make it happen, man. It's awesome.
I love it. And I think we need to make more noise when we see these things in the community. Like, we can't keep this in our own little track bubble. Like, people need to start tagging people they know in like the main media. Like, ESPN needs to pick this up because that's two of the premier runners on the planet going at it as a Twitter spat. Like, if this was, you know, a big time like NBA, if like Donovan Mitchell was going at, I don't know, like name another pretty damn good player in the NBA, that would be all over. So that's definitely cool. Before we get into all the fun stuff, like, share, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. Go find us on the socials at Talking in Ovals. Just go search for us there. Today's Monday, April 17th of 2023 for those keeping score at home. So we have a lot of good things going on. I want you guys to go check out last week's show before we jump into this one. We had a really good time, Dave. We had legendary coach over at my alma mater, Manchester Township High School. Rob Conover came on. He's just been an inspiration to so many people. He's a Hall of Fame coach in the state of New Jersey. He coached Andrew Valman, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and just an all-around great dude. If you want some good insight on some old school style coaching, definitely go give a listen last week. And shout out again to Ian Hahn for jumping on the show to surprise him. But hi, we got some PRs this week.
We do.
We're excited. Track is back, baby. Outdoor is in full swing. We have our usual suspects sending us stuff, but I had to give a special shout out first here to a little girl that I watched grow up, my best friend's daughter. She runs over in Texas right now, Brooke Coons. She runs for James Madison High School this week. She set a PR by 0.08 in the 800 meter. She ran a 244.55 as a freshman. So she's doing some real good things over there. I'm excited for you, Brooke. We also have from South Brunswick, we have Jason Kaiser, a sophomore, set a PR 55.74 in the 400 hurdles at the East Brunswick Invitational. And then for Westfield, we have a slew of people. We have Joe Piero in the 200, ran a 21.76. Dan Cortese and Liam Murillo both ran the 1600. Dan ran a 420.83. Liam ran a 421.61. Emmanuel Gaianilo ran a 57.88 in the 400 hurdles. Gabe Dayan threw a 149-foot 6-inch jab, and Ethan Stack did a 5'10" high jump. So congrats to everybody setting early season PRs. Nothing's better than an early season PR because you know that you're strong, you're coming in, and now you set the table. And, you know, Westfield is a strong team. So I know Coach is super happy to see that right there. So everyone, keep them coming. And let's get into this show because we have somebody who is no stranger to PRs, an individual that if you've been following the sport for, man, over the last decade at least, you've seen him at almost every single elite middle distance race mentioned somewhere in the elite field. He is a rare human that has broken 150 over 200 times in professional races. Just an overall fantastic runner. Erik Sowinski, professional middle distance runner, and now creating a new position in track and field, a professional pacemaker. What's going on, Erik?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Awesome hearing all these early season PRs by a lot of people. I'm excited to get rolling here myself soon. So it's awesome that track's back in full swing.
Oh yeah, I love it. You know, we can't have Arcadia meets every single week, but we still have some good stuff going on. So I want to jump right in, Erik. We have our segment that we start every show with, especially when we have, you know, runners on. I want to know from you, what was the spark? What was the beginning of your running journey? What was it that when you first started doing this, that the light clicked, like, you know what? I could do this forever. This is pretty damn awesome.
So I was always more of like a soccer player, basketball player growing up through elementary school, through middle school. My freshman year of high school, played soccer, was on the freshman team, almost scored 30 goals as a freshman. Played basketball, was starting point guard on the freshman team. So was going into my sophomore year. I was a tiny high school. I was like 5'2", 90 pounds as a sophomore. And the soccer coach told me I was too small to play on the varsity team. And I was like, man, I was a super competitive kid growing up all the time. And kind of after hearing that, I was like, hey, like maybe my talents would be better used elsewhere. So I had a bunch of friends on the cross country team, decided to go off for cross country, started out a little rough. I ran like 23 something for my first 5K. Ended up getting a little bit better. Ended up running like 17:30 as a sophomore. My first year of cross country 5K was awesome, but kind of the track is what really interested me, kind of getting to race these shorter races. So I ended up running, just under 2 minutes my first year of running the 800 in high school. And like I was always a fast kid, but I never ran track to be able to kind of, see what that related to. So running pretty well as a sophomore and, qualifying for regionals, just missing out on the state meet is kind of when I had that spark, was like, hey, like I'm competing against these guys that have been doing this for a long time and maybe I could be pretty good at this. So
I mean, that's awesome. And it's so funny because Dave, I think from top to bottom, maybe outside of Jordan Torney, every single person that we've had on this show has been like, yeah, I was a soccer player. I was a basketball player. I didn't want to run. Like, I think Jordan was the only one that was like, I was running at a young age.
Sarah Slattery was a swimmer.
Sarah was a swimmer. Yeah, but I just mean outside of the sport. Like, no one actually wants to run. Like, no one's love this sport, but it's like
no one gets to a middle school and they're like, I want to go out for the cross country team. They're all kind of forced into it. And then cross country usually is what starts it. And then that leads into track and field.
Yeah. I was the weirdo that I did want to run in middle school. I didn't want to run cross country. I was like, I'll do soccer, but then it was like, I could do track. And I knew I always ran forever. So I knew I'd do distance, but yeah, I had no interest in XC. I'm like 1.5 miles. I'm sticking to that mile. I don't want that extra half mile. But so you do that. You end up, becoming a good runner in high school, getting that spark, Erik. Bring us down memory lane. Bring us down like kind of the timeline of your career and catch us up to where we are now. Give us some good memories, some good stories. You have the floor, man. Let's hear your journey. Let's hear your tale.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so high school, I kind of just improved every year. My junior year was a little rough. I broke my ankle kind of halfway through basketball season, so I missed all of indoor season track my junior year. So I kind of struggled a bit then, but ended up running pretty well as a senior. I ended up winning the state championship in the 800. Ran 154.2. Up until then, I was kind of like thinking, hey, I'd go to D3, I'd go to Wisconsin lacrosse, I'd go to Oshkosh, I'd go to one of those schools. I mean, WIAC, some really, really good schools. And then after that state championship, I kind of had a little bit of interest on the D1 level. So I high school ex-teammate Matt Eschy, who also went to Iowa, was a volunteer assistant at Iowa at the time, kind of nudged the coaches to take a look at me. So I took a visit there. Iowa offered me a 10% scholarship. Wisconsin offered me a chance to try and walk on the team. And so I took my 10%, went to Iowa. And so that's kind of how I, got into my collegiate position in track and field.
So do you ever rib any of these coaches now? Like even your former Iowa coach or the Wisconsin coach at the time? I don't know if they're still coaching there, but do you ever kind of look at them and look back and go, so walk on, huh? It's like, is there any kind of like a joke there that you kind of do with them?
Yeah, they definitely laugh about it now. But it was tough. I mean, Wisconsin back in that day, but I mean, I was only a 154 guy, and they had a couple of recruits that were 149, 150 guys when that wasn't super common. Back in 2007, 2008. So I get it. Like I wasn't some blue chip recruit, but I also knew like I was so new in the sport that there was a lot more left in the tank for me. And so I just my visit to Iowa was awesome. Just the campus was great. Just kind of the atmosphere on the team, knowing that Joey Woody was a professional himself, and he kind of been through the ranks, and so ultimately it was a great decision for me. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's almost like now if you run a 154, you're almost guaranteed like a D3. Now it's like a 149. They're like maybe you can walk on.
Well, yeah, we had Coach Farrell on from Rutgers, and he said exactly that. Like he's looking for a walk on, nothing slower than like a 151, 150. Like That's
insane.
what D1 is. That's what big time D1 is now. It's pretty nuts.
It's awesome.
So go ahead, Derek. So continue. You're at Iowa. You're starting to do your thing there. What's your Iowa experience like? Give us some good memories. I want some fun stories. Get some insight. Get some people in trouble.
Maybe not a super fun story for me, but it was a big transition for me. Leaving home for the first time, like being away from all of my friends and going to Iowa, not knowing anyone. I remember walking into the weight room the first day. I didn't lift a weight at all in high school, not in any sport I played. So I'm watching these guys do all the Olympic lifts and I have no idea what's going on. So for the first probably 2 to 3 months, I was lifting with strictly a broomstick. So I'm in the corner of the weight room lifting with a broomstick while all these guys are like throwing up this crazy weight and squatting and stuff. And it was just like, man, like this is going to be an adjustment.
But that's a good weights coach right there. That didn't let you jump in, made you get formed first. Yeah. And that's, especially back in the Wild West time of, 2007, 2008, like there was a lot of things like we were in high school at the same time, it sounds like, and like bigger, faster, stronger was the big thing in high school, BFS. And that was like, get in there and start doing cleans and so it's like, that's a great weight coach right there. Shout out to your weight coach, whoever it was that made you do that.
Coach Keisha, thank you. And I mean, it's been great because honestly, that's been probably one of my strengths throughout my entire career. And I was so focused on getting good in the weight room that was kind of probably one of my strengths compared to a lot of 800-meter guys. Now it's just like, I lift like a sprinter, and I think that has helped me kind of in that longevity. But kind of going through that freshman year still, probably 2 or 3 months after that, we're doing this winter testing they would do every year. So we're doing like a standing broad jump, like a standing triple broad jump, an overhead shot put throw. And I mean, I'm this 120-pound like twig trying to do all this stuff. And my marks were not good compared to a lot of these 800 guys. And I remember like coach sitting me down and being like, hey, like, we're going to need to see something from you on the track to like justify everything. So it was like, man, like,
no pressure, 18-year-old kid, no pressure.
First, this is like a big transition, just going to a new school, a new state, and now you're putting this pressure on me because I can't throw a shot put over my head very far. I was like, man, but
you better earn that 10%.
But I mean, I just got better every year. From my freshman year of high school until my second or third years of pro, I improved in the 800 every single year for a decade or 11 years. So just kind of that. My best memory in college would have been my freshman year. We were last place in the Big Ten indoors. And we were like, man, like this is brutal. So we kind of sat down. We're like, hey, like, how are we going to improve? Like, what are we going to do as a team to be able to, kind of justify what these coaches, all this time and effort they're putting into us. And our junior year, we had Big Ten championships at home. And we had a little bit of a rough first day. The second day we started to pick it up. And the final day, I remember it was pretty close, but we were pretty far back. The athletic director had left the entire competition, not thinking we had a chance. We ended up scoring almost 110 points on the last day of the competition. And it came down to the 4x4. We ended up winning the Big Ten championship at home. And it was the first time they'd won a Big Ten championship since the mid 60s.
That's incredible.
So just kind of that transition with that same group of guys, over a 3-year span and just like kind of coming together to do that. That was probably like my best memory of college. Being able to do that at home in front of that home crowd was pretty special.
And it's great.
Fantastic,
like how many guests that we have on that talk about how important that team aspect was when they were in college. It's a lot different when it's post college and then you get pro. You have to be a lot more selfish, I would think. But most people that we have had on do cherish that time with those teammates, and going for a team title was more important to them than even doing anything that they could have as an individual.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, a lot of those guys I still talk to, on a weekly basis, and they've just been great friends throughout my entire career, and then the rest of my life has been great. So then I ended up, I was runner up in the NCAA my senior year in the 800. Ran pretty well. That was at Drake, so just about an hour and a half from home. Being able to do that there was pretty cool. And I honestly didn't have any plans of becoming a professional track and field athlete. I was applying to med schools. I took the MCAT. Wow. I was going to do that. And then coach kind of nudged me after that and was like, hey, like, I think we've still got some more in the tank. Like, I think we should give it another year and just, see what happens. So I ended up emailing every agent on USA Track and Field's list. I think it was like 40 or 50 agents at the time. Like, hey, this is my story. This is what I've done. I was runner up in the NCAA. Like, I'm looking to pursue this professionally. Like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing. Like, are you interested in helping me? radio silence. Not a
God.
not a single reply to that email. So luckily, I mean, Coach Woody had been through that whole, his 10, 12-year professional career. So he kind of set me up with my current agent. So they opened up a new running store, and I would say at the time I was working 40 hours a week at the running store. They were great letting me, leave to go to practice, leave to go to weights, and kind of maneuvering things around my schedule to be able to pursue that dream. And then the big breakthrough in my professional career would have been that same year indoors. I got invited to Millrose games 72 hours before the race. It was a big six. There was a big 600 duel,
Remember that race
between Nick and Dwayne. Yeah. Justifiably, because they were 4th and 5th in London the year prior. And I just kind of, came out of nowhere that last turn, broke the American record. Had all those guys from the store made the trip. They found out 3 days ahead of time. They all booked flights out to New York. One of them had a big fat head of me in the crowd. It was a pretty cool moment. And yeah, that's just kind of where my professional career took off. So I think that would probably be like that spark of being like, hey, I can compete with these guys on this level and just kind of see where my talent could take me. So
cool. Yeah, that's just pretty awesome. And like, that had to be like a cool feeling, right? And we've talked to some other people. We talked to someone like Julie Cully,
was very, very similar. Yeah.
2012 5K, trials champion. And, when I asked her, like, when was it that you got to a start line? And this is something for you now. Like, was it past that point that you started going up to starting lines and looking up and down and going, I can beat everybody here? Because before that, did you have a little bit of like imposter syndrome or things going on? Like, so what was that like competing at that elite level in the beginning?
I don't think it was ever like a light bulb of, hey, I can beat anyone. I think for me, it was more like, in college, I ran from the front every single race I was in. Like, I was going to go out in 51, 52. And if you could come and catch me and beat me on that day, then, props to you. But I think once I finally realized that, hey, I was competitive in these big races, like, I wasn't afraid to race against anyone. I would, go out hard in every race, and if I died, I died. But at some point during that race, like, I wanted to give myself a chance to win the race. So I think that just having a couple of those competitive opportunities where I was up there with those big dogs at the time, and knowing that, hey, like, I'm competitive and maybe on my best day I can beat them, I think that's when it just kind of clicked for me that, hey, I could pursue this for a while.
It had to be interesting competing against Dwayne, because Dwayne was a very similar style wanting to. Did you guys ever talk to each other like, all right, what are we doing today? 50, 49? Like, where are we today? What are you doing? Who's going to be the kind of the jerk that takes us out like a moron? Like, did you guys ever have that? Because you guys are similar. Dwayne liked to run from the front. You obviously like to run from the front. Was there ever any of that conversation? Like, okay, what's the plan? What are we doing?
We used to joke around that we used to hope that we would get each other in our heats at USA's, just because, hey, then we know, if one of us takes it, if the other one does, like, we're both going to get through the round regardless, because we know it's going to be the fastest heat. But I think that if it's just like a one-off competition, he was generally the one that would go to the front, because he would even get out a little harder than me. So it's kind of something I've missed over the last 5 or 6 years. Right. You went from Dwayne, who used to run like that, and then we had Boris, Berrien had a couple of really awesome years and ran from the front. And so now when I get into a race, people just kind of, defer to me. And, these 33-year-old legs have got a couple strong races in them every year, but not every race I can go out in 49 or 50 anymore. So,
well, that's like when we had on Johnny Gray, and then we also had on Kadibus Robinson, same tree. And then they coached Dwayne too. So they all had a very similar style. Just go out and make them work and hold on and make everyone else just have so much pain that they give up.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of my strengths, is just, was going out hard. And I think it was me just knowing that there was never a day I didn't give it 100%. If I went out to the front, if I didn't have it that day, like, I gave it everything I had. And so if someone was going to beat me, that they were going to have, a pretty good day. So.
You know what? It sounds awesome, because you talk exactly like Prefontaine. And I know, like, we all had that similar, like, we all, like, Without Limits was always big in a lot of the runners' lives. And especially if you were like kind of like a middle distance guy, because he was a good miler, and then the 5K and all that. It's like, did you watch him in high school like all of us did in college? And did he kind of help give you more of that mentality? Like, because what you just said there was almost similar to him. Like, it's going to come down to whoever has more guts. Like, is that kind of where your mentality is every time you race?
Definitely. I think he was definitely more talented and had a lot more wins under his belt than I did. But, definitely kind of just took that mentality like that, because I think it's especially in the 800, like you have to play to your strengths. And for me, like my speed has always been my biggest strength. So for me to defer to someone else in a race, I think would be taking away from what I'm good at. So that's kind of the mentality we took, is just, hey, get on the race and at some point, give yourself a chance to win, be at the front of the pack.
So you talked about having, those ancient 33-year-old legs, and, it's ridiculous to say, but in the world of track, that is like, you're an elder statesman, right? You're sitting there looking down the line at some high schooler at 17 at times. It's like, Jesus, I'm your dad. Like, stop, get away from me. But like, what is it like now? Because you've done a transition that I don't think is an easy one. You make it look real easy, but you are now in a class of your own as a pacemaker, as a pace setter. What was it? What got into that mindset of like, this is something that I could maybe do? And have you felt like it's really helped you extend and elongate your career?
So it kind of came out of nowhere. I had a one-off pace job. I think it was 2018 when Yomif broke the indoor world record at BU. They contacted me. It was like the week after US indoors. We're like, hey, like, could you help us out and do this? So I ended up pacing him there. And then I didn't do any pacing for like 2.5 more years. And so then it was outdoors of 2021. A meet director who does all of the UK Diamond Leagues, he does Doha, contacted me kind of last minute, was like, hey, like our pacemaker pulled out. We really need someone who can pace this 1500. Like, would you be willing to help us? So I had raced an 800 in New York, got on the plane the next day, ended up getting to Birmingham. No, it was in Gateshead that year. Got to Gateshead like 9 or 10 in the morning and ended up pacing that same day. So I got in, I took a nap, I paced at like 4 or 5 p.m. that evening, did a pretty good job. And from then I just like kind of got more contacts, like reaching out for me to pace these races. And at that point, I mean, I've been unsponsored since then. So kind of a way to make ends meet, to pursue my own professional endeavors. And I've always been really, really good at pacing and workouts. I think that these meet directors, since I've raced so much, are really familiar with me and know that like, hey, I'm going to give an effort every day, not dependent on, if the weather's bad, like I'm going to be there. If, I'm not feeling great, I'm going to be able to get the job done. So I think if they like someone who they're familiar with and they know is just going to be able to do what's prescribed.
So I want you to talk about that a little bit, because you just mentioned, obviously, you don't have a sponsor.
Yeah.
And I think that there needs to be something to be said. Like, I think there needs to be like someone should sponsor good pacers, right? Because I think that's important, especially now with the current meets, the way that they're going. Like, so many big meets have pacers, and I feel like every single time there's a big attempt somewhere, you're in that pacer mix right now. Like,
so many world records.
Yeah,
with him as the pacer.
Yeah, it's been like an incredible watch the last few years. It's like, oh, this person's going for this national record or this world record. And there's Erik Sowinski right up front leading this pack. He'll be taking them through around this time. And what do you know? Click, click, click. You step off. They're on pace. Like, I think you might be creating a different feel, which kind of might suck for you, because you might be like the pioneer and the guinea pig, and then everyone else is going to reap your benefits. But do you feel like you're doing something right now where you're setting a trend where people that, maybe, you're a 144 guy with your PR, but it's like maybe people that aren't necessarily still at their 144 peak, but you can click off a 150 still. Like, do you think that you're setting that for other individuals that might be going down into more of the twilight?
I hope so. And I think that, I kind of, we had Matt Shearer and we had Bram Som back in the day, and those guys kind of did that same thing. And that's just kind of something that I've, looked up to them and what they did throughout their professional and then into their pacing careers. And yeah, I mean, I think that, it would be cool if there was more sponsorship opportunity for pacers. I think it's funny because during my professional career, like a lot of the biggest thing in these contract negotiations was, they're talking about TV time and X and Y and Z, and now you bring that up and they kind of renege.
You have more TV time than anyone.
Yeah, and
you're
that's
always
kind
on
of
TV in the front of the race.
Main things. Yeah, it's one of the main things I'll bring up is like, hey, like you're not going to get anyone in this race that's going to have more TV time than me. But so far, my efforts have been unsuccessful. But we'll see.
We're going to fight for you here with our limited reach. We will fight.
I have a question for you. Do you feel that you fully kind of transitioned into this role, or do you still look at yourself as one of the elite 800 meter runners, and that is more of your focus than on the actual pacing? Like, how do you see your career holding out this year? And maybe, as it goes on.
Yeah. So I still train 100% as if I'm an elite 800 meter athlete, because I think that is what has made me so successful, over the past decade plus. And that's what I'm comfortable with. And that's what makes these pacing jobs so much easier for me, is knowing that if I'm in, 144, 145 shape, that if they need me to come through in 150, 151, that I can do that, any day of the week. So I think that, given a good stint of training, I think I'm still one of the best 800 meter guys in the US. I think that, I can make a final coming up here. So that's ultimately my goal, is, give myself a chance to make the final. And then when you get there, anything can happen. So yeah, to answer your question, I still train every day as if I'm going to be, racing every weekend, trying to run, 144 and make a team. And I think that has helped the pacing job. So it's probably about 50-50, I'm hoping, this outdoor season. Not having a sponsor has kind of weighed that down a little bit, just because it's hard to justify, pacing races to turn around and use that money to pay to go to races myself. So especially just because for me, like, pacing and to be good at it, like, I need to put a lot of time in at the track, and I know what I need to do that makes me successful. So it's hard to, find a part-time job that I'm also able to do while doing this professionally. So that's been the hardest part for me probably now, is just like, hey, how can I make ends meet while being good at both of these things simultaneously?
And I mean, you're not just a good pacer. When you hear people like Jakob Ingebrigtsen and all these people say, like, he is perfect. Like, they talk about how you hit the pace perfect, like within 2 or 3 tenths of a second every time that they need you to. So, like, the athletes that you are pacing have certainly taken notice. I read an article that was in the New York Times just about you pacing, and just to see the athletes and their quotes and to say, like, what a remarkable job you do. That has to feel good, knowing that these athletes who are going for these records, they want you as the person who's pacing their race. Like, they call and they say, I want Erik Sowinski as the pacer for my race. That has to be pretty cool.
It's awesome. I mean, the main thing for me has always been like, hey, I want to give back to the sport in any way that I can, because that was the mentality that, all of my coaches have had growing up. So, I coached a high school team for 5 years when I was back in Iowa, and now being able to give back a little bit through pacing, I think that, leaving the sport in the best spot that I can personally has always been a goal of mine. So I think that, being able to do this pretty successfully as a pacer has been awesome, and getting to know a lot of those guys has been pretty rewarding as well.
So I'm definitely going to call out, and I'm going to tag them: Flow Track, Mile Split, Sidious Mag. Where are you guys? This has been one of the best ambassadors of the sport for over 10 years, 15 years. Get this man a sponsorship. One of you three step up and get this man some money, because you guys are making a ton of money showing him as the greatest pacer in the world right now. So I'm flat out calling those three specifically, because there are big three in the running world right now. If Dave and I had the money, we would, but our sponsorship would be like, you need to pay us again, because we're going to pay you. Like, we'd have to like just circular the money back and forth. But so get me into the mindset of when you're trying to get into pace these races, because you're obviously not pacing. You're not running at 800. You're pacing for a 15. You're pacing for a 3K. And so what is your mindset when you're going into this? Are you getting ready to run that race and now you're trying to hit that time? Or would you be just trying to get ready to run that race to hit your specific like 800? Like, for anyone that's potentially looking to get into this point in their career, how do you handle pacing?
So I kind of have that same competitive mindset, whether I'm pacing or racing. I think that is one of the main things that's contributed to this consistency throughout the longest time. I mean, I have done the same warm up I've done since I was a freshman in college. Every single practice, every single race, like, it's just a routine. And I think that, if I were to skimp on any of that, I'd be doing a disservice to myself, and that I wouldn't be as confident going into these races. So, I go into it with the mentality of like, hey, I need to get this job done. But it's kind of that same competitiveness, knowing like, hey, these guys are relying on me to hit this time in X, Y, and Z. And I think that it's a bit of a different mindset than racing, right? Because I know that I'm going to be stopping at some point. Yeah. So it's a little bit more thinking than if I was an 800. And 800, I'd go out hard and know that it's going to hurt at some point. But in these races that I'm pacing, like, I'm looking at the clock, I'm trying to make sure I'm where I need to be. So it's a little bit different mindset, but at the same point, like, it's that competitive juice that just keeps going.
How often do you feel great right before you're about to step
I was
off?
just going to ask that. Like,
yeah. Do you want?
you ever get the
really
urge?
stay
Like,
on the
screw
track?
it. I'm going to keep going.
How often does that happen?
Never in a 1500. I was never a good 1500 guy, and especially the 1500 now. Like these guys are going out in 151, 152, 153. It's crazy. There have been a few 800s that I've considered it. Doha last year, I paced the 8. They asked for like 50.5. I got out at the cut, and there was nobody there, and I slowed down. I ended up going through in like 54. The field was maybe like 55 low, and I'm like, man, like I could genuinely probably win this race, if not be top 3. By the end of the day, like that's not what they brought me there for.
Yeah, is
right?
that frowned upon? Is that frowned upon for the pacer to stay on
I'm sure
track?
it is. I'm sure.
I think it would be frowned upon if I didn't win. If I win, then it'd probably be okay. But if not, then it probably looks bad, and I wouldn't get asked to do anything in the future. So it's not worth the risk.
So are you guys as pacers, because obviously with the longer races, you'll have like, you'll run the 8, someone will take like the 5th. Like, are you guys kind of competitive as pacers too? Like if you guys are like on, are you more encouraging to each other? Like, great job there. Like, so is there a little bit of competitiveness between you guys hitting your marks as well?
Probably a little bit in the back of the head, right? Because you want to be the best at what you do. But at the end of the day, like I know a lot of those guys really well that pace a lot of the 8s, the 15s, the 3Ks on the circuit, and they're all great guys. So I definitely would call them, good friends. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I was a little bit competitive going into it every time that I do it.
All right, so Dave, this is what we need: trash talk. We need you to start trash talking them. We need you to sit there, pace your race, and then request to get on the mic later and do an interview and be like, "You see that? I was right on. They were a second off that world record. I was the reason it could have occurred. It just got blown." Like, I need you to start. Let's bring trash talking to track.
So, question: do you talk to the athletes prior to the race, like in Ingebrigtsen and those guys, to figure out exactly what it is that they want you to do, or is that all taken care of by the people who run the meet? Like, do you have any contact with the athletes that you're pacing?
Yeah, it's kind of the athletes, their agents, their coaches, the meet director will all they do like a technical meeting the night before all of these competitions where they talk about the pacing, and they talk about the progressions for the field events. So that's kind of where that all goes down, and just kind of generally that's like one athlete that wants to be at the front, and if you're going to follow the pace, then you get to request what it's going to be. So I'm definitely a part of those conversations, but I'm not the one that decides it per se.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
I also would imagine that they want the pace to be even, right? They don't want fluctuation in like this 200 faster, this one slower. They kind of want it to be nice, even pace, so that when you step off, it's kind of they can just gradually keep on going, not like a change of pace.
Generally, for the 1500, for sure. The 800, obviously, guys get out a little bit harder. I think like standard in the 800 in these bigger meets outdoors is like 50 flat to 50.5. So obviously, if they kept that going, they'd break the world record. Right. But the 1500s, yeah, it's the first lap sometimes a little bit faster just to string the guys out, so they're not fighting to get position and make it a pretty smooth race. But yeah, after that, it's just trying to hit those splits as even as I can to make them feel comfortable.
And you do a hell of a job at that.
Thank you.
So we had on Eric Holt not too long ago, and he talked about just, the number of fast races that are right now going on, and he attributed that as one of the big reasons why we see so many freaking fast times. Now, obviously, there are a lot of pacers at all those races as well, right? You being, usually at the premier race of that weekend. Are you seeing more and more people pacing, or are they kind of going to you and like, hey, kind of pick your brain on a strategy to like help out as being one of now like the veteran pacers? And do you see this continuing as we're getting, more fast times indoor, more fast times outdoor, a lot more records being broken? Do you see like services like yours being more and more needed as the future goes on?
Yeah, so I've definitely had a lot of guys who are new to pacing, a lot of younger guys who are pacing a race for the first time, reach out and just ask kind of what I do in preparation, mentally and physically to be prepared to do that job. I think that's probably helped relieve some nerves, because it can be super stressful at times. But I think that, the less you focus on that and the more you focus on just like, hey, this is kind of just another day of the track. I'm just trying to hit this time through this rep. I think that takes a little bit off their shoulders, which hopefully has helped some of that amount. And yeah, I think that pacing will be here. As long as these guys are trying to run fast. Yeah. Ultimately, like it's these fast athletes that are ones requesting the pace. Like they're the ones that want pacemakers there because they realize how much easier it is to follow someone around the track and not being the one that's being chased. Because if you're being chased, that's never a fun feeling. So I think that them getting to relax, and then when the rabbit steps off the track, they only have in a 1500 generally 500-600 meters to go. That is just a prolonged kick for them, and they're not kind of the target on their back for a long period in that race.
So speaking of Erik, we had a good talk with him about this influx and how fast everyone is now, and he had a few reasons why he thinks it is. Definitely there's way better. I'm going to talk mostly more about this past indoor season. There's way more facilities that are fast. There's way more races, and he was big, as a lot of our guests are, on the new spikes and the shoes and how much they help you to recover. Do you find that those are two main factors in why we saw this ridiculous indoor season where one meet in Boston, I think there were 75 people who broke 4 minutes in one meet?
Yeah, it's crazy. I think that definitely does contribute to it. And I also think, right, just kind of the mindset of iron sharpens iron, right? So if you see this person doing this, and if you're not up there with them, like, you're going to get left behind. So I think there's kind of been a bit of a mentality change, just seeing everyone improve so much. And that, I kind of even saw that after I left college. I mean, I stayed around Iowa until October of last year. So I was there for almost 15 years. And I just kind of saw the transition of how good the athletes were getting year after year after year. So I don't think it was just this thing that came out of nowhere. I think that the sport is just getting progressively better year after year, and that the tracks and the shoes definitely help that too. But I think there's kind of a culmination of that mindset, as well as the technological things that have contributed to that.
I was going to say that, the technology and the fact that, when I was in high school back in the 90s, we didn't know what other people were training or how they were training. Now with the internet and Strava and everything, exactly what everyone's doing. So I think that, not that everyone's copycatting each other, but you have a better indication of what's working for everyone else. So people are just kind of all more on the same page, and they're all training harder, and they understand more about, you have to rest. You can't go hard all the time. So just this influx of information, I feel, has really brought this sport to these heights that is now, especially here in America, where we see our guys are competing at that world level in 800-mile, 5K, 10K. What Grant Fisher did was awesome. I'm not sure if we would have seen that in years past, but we have such an influx of information that's really helping us understand better how the human body works, and I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that kind of is a big point there, is that we're seeing the gap between the Americans and a lot of others in some of these distance races has definitely shrunk. So I don't think you can say that it's just the shoes, it's just the tracks, since that gap is shrinking. It's not staying the same as it had been in the past. So I think that it's been a mindset change in the States. I think that's really been awesome to see for a lot of these guys.
So I think this question might have some bias coming from you, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you think at a lot of the big races, it should be mandatory for some of these longer races to have pacers involved, just to kind of keep the races honest? Or do you think that it should still be kind of at the athlete's request? Or, because you see some championship meets, and some meets go out real slow. We have Matty Centrowitz. I don't know if Matty Centrowitz wins the gold in the 1500. And then this is not a shot at Matt. Matt's a great runner, but he's such a tactical beast that he was like, oh, cool. You want to run slow? I'm going to outkick all of you. I'm going to give it my all. But do you think that it could be beneficial to the sport if we start having a little more mandatory pacing to kind of keep races honest and to maybe make it a little more exciting, right? Because track's one of the weird sports where you can have the best 12 people on the line in the world for the 1500 and then see it get 1 in 1430, and it's like, wait, what the hell? What just happened? These are all guys that are 14 flat. What is going on? Do you think it would help the sport if we can do something like that? Because every other sport, guys have to go all out 24/7 to win their competitive sport. We can get very tactical on track and field. So do you think professional pacers would kind of help keep everybody honest in these types of races? Or do you like the tactic side of it?
I think I like the tactic side in championship racing. Strictly from a like, hey, that's like the grassroots of the sport. Yeah. Like in a championship, like let's see who's the best without any aid along the way, and may the best man win on that day. So like championship racing, I would say no to pacing, but I think that pacers in the rest of these big races are integral to the sport, especially with how crazy the standards have gotten to qualify for a world championship, for an Olympics. Like it's pretty difficult to do that in a lot of these distance races without some help along the way. So bigger races, pacers for sure, but championship racing, I think keep the sport at its roots and just let the guys duel it out.
So speaking of that, the standards came out for the Worlds this year, and there were some people saying that they were too steep. Some people were saying good. I'm glad that they're faster. What is your take on all that? Do you think that it's good that they have these much faster times to be able to be eligible to compete in that race?
Yes and no. I think I lean more towards the not being super enamored with it, only because then they fill half of the field with world rankings, and then how a lot of these athletes get into the meets that contribute to the world rankings can be kind of cloudy. I think that's not super straight cut. So guys with more points that have agents who have connections to certain meets are getting kind of an unfair advantage in my eyes. And not to say I exploited that in my career. I was getting invited to all of the races. I think one year I was ranked like 8th or 9th in the world based strictly off of my world ranking. I didn't have one of the 8 or 9 fastest times, but I was going to race anywhere, any day, and the meet directors liked that, and so I gained a lot of points doing that. So yeah, I would say I definitely don't love the filling the field with 50% of the athletes based on world rank. I think that we should figure out something, based on times and, let those guys duke it out rather than who can get into what meet and what day.
Yeah, because I know the time standards came out too, and it was like 144 flat, for the 800, for the world. Like it's really I think there were maybe 1 or 2 Americans last year who would have even had the standard time to even go to a world championship, and that's a huge country, So I feel like at times it might be taken away from some other countries who might not have as much of a field to go after. It's steep, but then on the other hand, I'm kind of like, that might help get the best of the best to actually run fast and race. So I'm torn about it, but I see your aspect too, and that's a very valid point.
Yeah, I've never actually, I've been on the side of I like it because I like having the best of the best be there. But I didn't think of your end, and I think it takes someone being in the professional setting, because I didn't even, realize that's how they decide kind of the rest of the field. So yeah, that is kind of dirty, specifically because we don't have a specific league, right? So it's not like you can see a baseline, like you said, it's who gets into what meets, and it's not always guaranteed. So that side, I kind of understand where you're coming from. But I don't know what the happy medium would be, lowering the standards. Are we now getting the best of the best in the world to go? I think there is that, and I think they'll try it out. And if it's, a real crappy product, they'll probably lower it again. The standards come out every year for a reason, because they're always a little different based on what's going on. So I appreciate your input on that from the professional end, because I didn't even think of that at all, Erik.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing for me has always been, right. You could have a guy in the States who takes, 3rd place in the 800 this year, runs under 145 and doesn't make the team because he hasn't run the standard. And I think that's kind of crazy to me that, then they'll defer to, whoever the next athlete is that has the standard, especially in these countries that have, proven year after year that they can, pump out 3 good athletes. I think kind of limiting it in that sense is just kind of the part of me that I don't love. So
you might have swayed me. You might have swayed me. Just hearing that, again, not being a professional, not being in that space, that's something I didn't hear. But I do want to ask you this question. This is kind of a question that we ask all of our guests towards the end of the show, and I want to hear your opinion on it. Now, obviously, you ran professionally. You were very good at the sport. But being a professional runner is not super glamorous. It's not super lucrative unless you get the big endorsement deals and you're winning the Diamond League consistently, right? That is really where our money kind of only is in this sport. For you, how do we make this sport more popular? How do we get the casuals involved? How do we get the money to the professionals like you that have had a fantastic career that probably should be sitting back right now going, I was an amazing runner. I shouldn't have to work for anything at this point. Do you have any ideas? You probably have had many ideas throughout the years, but what idea do you have that we could implement right now that would get this sport to blow up and would get us, get our runners, our great runners, what they deserve, throwers, jumpers, etc.?
So kind of something I've always said, even before it took off worldwide, was like, hey, why are we not like these NASCAR and F1 drivers where I can have 10 different logos on my jersey? Because for me, it's impossible for me to find one sponsor, not just sponsor, one athletic clothing sponsor whose logo I can have on my left chest that's going to give me $50,000. Like, me trying to find that, it's not going to happen. But I could tell you, I could find 10 local businesses that would give me $4,000 or $5,000 a piece to, have a part of that on my jersey. They have a relationship with me. Like, they want to see me succeed. Like, they've known me for all these years, but they, can't invest in the sport because they don't have, this amount of money. They don't manufacture apparel. So I think that, limiting the restrictions on advertisement, I think would be the biggest thing for me. Is, that's how we could put more money in athletes' pockets, is, letting them pursue these relationships and giving these businesses, these individuals, kind of a platform to show, their logos, what they do. That's probably my biggest input on that.
That's amazing. I love that. You could do the back, right? The backs could be your thing. It doesn't have to be up front, but that's amazing.
Yeah.
Love that.
What do you feel that we could do to kind of like what Alex was saying, to make the sport more popular, to where people actually I'm going to watch it, Alex is going to watch it, you're going to watch it, but like that casual fan to tune in to watch track and field, and to get to know those athletes. We've had so many suggestions like, put it on FanDuel, put it on DraftKings, have betting, but then there's other areas there where, people could go races and whatnot. But what do you think that we could do in this country to help make the sport more popular to a mass?
Probably one thing, I think we need to shorten some of these competitions. I think that, having a track and field competition that goes on for 4 or 5 hours, like even a hardcore track fan is going to have a hard time, paying attention to everything throughout that entire span of that competition. So I think if we could do, an hour, a 90-minute TV window where it's back to back to back racing, I think that would be huge. I think that, the DraftKings FanDuel thing would bring a lot more people into the sport, just from, that the betting edge, people being competitive on that, and, wanting to brag to their friends that, hey, I had this guy, you had this guy. I think that, people like to be competitive about things. And I think that that's something that the sport is lacking, is that, people can't relate to track and field athletes because they don't have anything like that to do. And, we don't get a lot of media attention, so they're not seeing guys online and socially all the time. So I think that bringing something like betting to track and field, I think, would only be a positive for the sport, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we need more of these big time races here in this country. And there's many issues with that. Like, really, there's no track and field only stadium that's not part of like a college or a university. I mean, Hayward Field's great, but you can't have every meet there. Whereas indoor track, we got, there's hundreds of them. So it's like, I think, people with deep pockets have to start building a better facility, and so our athletes don't have to fly over and go to Europe for months and months at a time. They can stay here, compete, and that might draw the other athletes from other countries over here as well.
Yeah. It's just hard because, I mean, a lot of that is kind of gate kept. I mean, I think about myself last year, like USATF had the meet at Mount Sac that was a gold label meet. They had the meet at New York that was gold label, but because I'm not a tiered athlete through USATF anymore, like I don't get any funding for travel.
Question. Yep. What does gold label mean? Because for any of the casual fans that might not know what that means, are listening, what is that label system that you're talking about? Give us some inside baseball there.
Yeah, so we kind of like Diamond League is the top tier. I mean, that's kind of, the big circuit, should we say, throughout the entire season. And then gold label falls kind of one tier below that. Like a gold label is required to have a certain amount of prize money and whatnot. So it's financially the second most lucrative circuit, should we say, in track and field. But USATF put on those two meets. And if you're not a tiered athlete from USATF, you don't get any financial assistance to go to the meet. So me last year, like I, paid for myself to go out to New York. I ended up taking third in the race. I ran 1:45.5 and I made like $600 because I had to pay for my own travel. So it's like, I think that's the part that's like gate kept, is that, a lot of these athletes have their opportunities limited because like it's a financial restriction to go to some of these meets if you don't have the in per se.
So do you
Dave,
feel
sorry, go ahead, Dave.
something like what they started with the American Track League and things like that? Do you think that that'll help? Because I'm not sure if they have the standards at those meets, with the old standards, but those were fun when I watched a few of them. They were on ESPN, but again, they're in these like small, tiny little venues, and to me, it's just hard. Like, you can't get the athletes to commit and have them run a certain amount of meets. Like we love Sydney Blackland. She's one of our all-time favorites. She's from New Jersey, stud. But I think she ran like 3 or 4 meets last year. I mean, she didn't have to run more. But so, what can we do to try to just, I don't know. It just makes me so mad that there's not a buzz in this country about the sport that I just love and adore and cherish. It's just.
So, Eric, quickly.
I want everyone to.
Jumping on Dave's, as an athlete, would you take something if they would do like instead of just, 1 5-hour meet, right? Or 2-day meets where trials, then finals, right? The next day, if they did something where they'd say, hey, we'll give you guys TV time, but it's kind of a 3-day meet. All the trials happen earlier. And then Friday is our field events, Saturday's distance, Sunday sprints, because sprints make the money, right? So it's like, and they split it up that way, and it was all finals. So it would be like, here's 45 minutes or an hour of finals of do you think something like that would work? And would athletes kind of be more willing, knowing that if they qualified, they would get face time on these sporting events? And I think something that you said, Dave was asking about getting the casuals. I love your idea of the sponsorships, because if you're investing your money on 6 or 7 athletes that are good and you're putting them on their logo, you're going to push for that, right? To then start to be on TV. And you're going to tell people, because you might be the little mom and pop general store that, puts $4,000 in your pocket to go do this. You're going to want people to see that logo. So you're now going to sit there and, hey, our sponsored athlete is Erik Sowinski. He's going to be competing at these events. Go watch him. So I think that could be a gateway to getting more casuals, because if you get these stores involved, and I really didn't even think of that, like NASCAR, Formula One, that's one of the things. A lot of their companies do promote it, right? You'll have the big cardboard cutouts. I could see Eric's like cardboard cutout, like AutoZone. Like, that would be awesome. But it's like, but I think that's a good idea. But like with my other concept with the meet, do you think a lot of athletes would sign up for that, where the trials are off camera? Those could be streamed, right? That people can watch that. But now the big meets, which Dave, we've talked about how much we hate NBC's coverage, right? But I think they would do an hour spot of just nonstop track coverage, even the 10K, 5K, if they know like, okay, this is only going to be finals 815 steeple, you get the set amount. Do you think athletes and other companies would sign up for something like that where it's just finals?
Yeah, I think so, especially because then you have the stories, right? You have the stories of the guys who made it through these trials. Maybe you had an underdog who's getting on TV for the first time. I think that's how you tell the stories that people can connect to and want to root for, as opposed to, something super drawn out. You're cutting away from a race for 5 minutes at a time and just trying to fill things. I think that the more you condense it and just have these, set storylines that you can tell people, I think that's how you familiarize with them. I think that's how we can grow the sport too. I think I like your idea a lot.
And I know we had Michael Johnson give his type of thing, and he was cutting out a lot of events. And I feel like this way is a way where we don't have to cut out any events, because like, listen, people watch golf. People watch NASCAR, like you said. People watch baseball. Typically fairly boring things if you're not into it, right? But it has enough of a big following. There's no reason why people can't get into the 10K, right? Because we love the 10K. But eventually, if that's the only like, okay, here's the distance day, and you're sitting down with someone and like, hey, listen, these people, they're running 5 minutes a mile for 6 miles. Like, they're amazing. And then you can kind of grasp to that high school runner.
4 minutes a mile.
But you know what I mean? I'm giving the example. Like, you'll grasp a high school runner. It's like, wait, I never broke 5 in high school, and they're clipping that off at 6 miles. I'm going to sit down and watch this. That's pretty cool. Like, I just think that could work. And yeah, Dave, we got to pitch this to someone. Eric, We got to pitch all. I love your idea because your idea, along with Sarah Slattery was the first person that brought up gambling on this show, and we talked about it. I think a smorgasbord of this could actually really, really work. We got to get some deep pocket people, Eric. Let's do this.
I'm in.
And we'll make you the face of it, okay? Talking and Nobles will be behind it, but you will be our ambassador as the elite athlete, and you'll pace the first big time 1500 in the circuit.
Deal. I'm in.
I love it. I love it. Dave, anything else you want to add before we hop out of here? This was a blast.
I just want to say, so we can expect this year for Erik Sowinski to run his own races as an individual, go U.S. trials as an individual, and then kind of see where it goes after that in terms of the whole pacing thing?
Ultimately, that's the goal. Yeah. So I've got a busy month ahead of strictly some pacing, and then after that, I'm hoping that you'll see me on some starting lines and competing for a shot to make the team. So
can't wait.
I'm calling 143 right now. 143 at trials. I am calling it. You're dropping a 143. You're making the team. I'm saying it right now.
I hope so.
I think we're doing it. Eric, thank you so much for coming on. This was a blast.
Of course. Thanks for having me, guys.
Once again, he's Erik Sowinski. He is a fantastic ambassador for the sport, longtime middle distance, elite middle distance runner, now turned absolutely world class, the best in the world pacemaker. But that's not who he wants to be. He still wants to be the best in the planet at the 800 meter. Eric, anything you want to shout out? Obviously, get this man a sponsor. Again, Flow Track, Mile Split, Sidious Mag, looking at you guys. Anything else you want to shout out before we jump out of here?
No, just thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to, hop on any podcast that I can to help grow the sport. Anyone listening to this, if you've got any questions, looking for advice, I'm an open book and I'll respond to anything. So I'm happy to help out any way I can.
Awesome. Again, we really appreciate you coming on. We both tracked your career and we both, loved every moment of it. So thanks again. So once again, Talking Nobles here. Like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars if you can. Spread this word of mouth. That's the biggest way to spread the show. So if you're a big time running fan, tell the next person that likes running, like, hey, there aren't many track podcasts. Here's one that is talking to the biggest names in the sport and getting their life stories, and it's fantastic. So go listen and giving great ideas for how we grow this. Because Dave, I think if we start combining all the ideas that we've had from all of our great guests, we can solve this freaking problem. And then we're still going to be poor because someone with the deep pocket's going to do it. Well, and forget that we're there. And then we're going to try and sue them, and they're going to send like Johnny Cochran-esque person at us, and we're screwed. But we're going to give the ideas. That's what we're going to do here, Dave.
Yes, we are.
All right, everyone. We appreciate you listening. We'll be back. Go find us on the socials. So long, all.